Hello, my little LinkedIn community. It's been a while. I have managed to find myself in a place where I have danced with the feelings and experiences that my clients get to tell me about, and that I see obviously happening a lot around the world at the moment. Just didn't really think it would wash over me in the way that it did. I experienced over the last 2 years of my life a series of events that can only be best described as traumatic. I felt like I was handling those situations quite well, but what I didn't expect was to have some really important social structures supporting me ripped out from underneath me, and I really was left in a place as a single mom of feeling completely desperate, to the point where over the Easter weekend I became completely numb. I was intermittently relying on mind-numbing substances, and started to calculate in my mind what the worthiness or point was of actually going forward, where my career and everything that I've invested myself in over the last 4 years is geared towards being strong enough to support other people in their pain. So I had a real existential crisis. I was like, how on earth am I going to be able to be this person for other people when inside I'm crumbling myself? How on earth am I going to support myself going forward if that's how I feel? And what was really interesting for me was that, 10 years ago, I would have considered myself a really popular person. And in recent years, through different experiences of grief and loss, disgruntled boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, and these experiences where I was coming up against people in a way that they were having quite extreme reactions to me. So in the last year, I can name a few people on my hand that blocked me. I had one long-term friend, unsubstantiatedly in my mind, at a lunch table, like just swearing at me. There's been incidences over the last period where I've really had to scratch my head. Is it me? What is going on? Is it unhealed parts of myself? Do I need to, am I losing my grip on reality? Am I just becoming one times big toxic loser? So today I want to talk a little bit about this concept of a toxic loser. What is toxic loser syndrome? How that overlaps with mental health challenges, and essentially how we can support each other. Because what was really interesting for me was that even though I was coming up against that really sharp edge of despair, social isolation, increasing social isolation, and a lot of confusion in my life, I did try and reach out to one or two people, and their responses was, I kind of know how you feel, but there was no follow-up. There was no phone calls a couple of days later or a message in the morning to say, hey, you're okay. And it made me realize, with no discredit to those friends of mine that I was at least able to speak to. Thank you, Jesus, for that. Thank you to my friends for that. Is that people have got a lot of their own stuff going on, and that the world at the moment is so flipping overwhelming that I think people just compartmentalize other people's pain, like they can't really go there themselves. So this idea that help is available for you when your back up is against the wall is not entirely actually how it goes. So what happens? essentially, you experience a stripping away of resources, support structures, self-confidence and direction. And for me as a single mom, I started to really worry that I was going to be infecting my son with my toxic loser syndrome. And yeah, for me to be able to wake up the next morning and go, right, I've danced with that feeling now quite intently, and I know how that sensation of loneliness and despair can... What I experienced was like a bit of a shutting down of my body. I became quite mechanical and numbed out, and I started to become quite pragmatic about it. I didn't think I'd be that way. I thought, should I dance with that experience, I would be lying on the floor in a heap of tears, but I wasn't. I was actually quite compos mentis and calm. I call this suicide ideation, and I really want to differentiate between that. It's the experience of entertaining those thoughts, as opposed to really thinking that I'm going to wake up in the morning and throw myself under a bus. Although those feelings are very internalized and very real, they come very close to becoming a part of your psyche. They don't quite get there. I think what I was lucky to do was to have resources as a skill set. Through what I've done, and the ability to be able to be vulnerable with a few key people in my life was hugely important to me. So even though those people might not have followed up with me, the fact is that I knew that in stepping into my vulnerability, that I was really doing something profound to help myself. So that would be my first piece of advice, is just lay yourself bare. People will not even give it more thought than what is comfortable for them, and you're not going to be judged and shamed for that experience. So anyone out there who is experiencing this suicide ideation, my number one tip would be just to get emotionally naked. Try it on for size, write it down, phone somebody and say, I'm having suicide ideation thoughts right now, and this is how it's been processed in my mind. Just that one small act will make a massive difference. In my next video, I want to talk about toxic loser syndrome, because I feel like this is a pandemic in and of itself as we go through COVID. And it can be a bit of a macabre way of defining mental health issues. And there are tools and ways for us to understand that better as well. So next video, sign in, toxic loser syndrome.